Okay, then let's start with the presentations. Thanks to everybody who is here today. We are very happy today to have the collaboration of the Leibniz Centre for Agricultural Landscape Research, ZALF, with the presentation of 3 doctoral projects by Marta Del Rio Duque, Héctor Camilo Morales Muñoz, and Tatiana Rodriguez, who are PhD students. No, I will present individually to each of them when it's their turn. But first of all, I would like to remind all of you the engagement rules, and that is first of all, that the colloquium it's being recorded, but you have the option to switch off your video and send questions through the chat box if you don't want to appear on camera or to talk over the microphone. But if you don't have any problem with that, you at the end in the Q&A session, you also can raise your blue hand when you go to the participants image here down your screen. Another important thing to remind you is we will have the 3 presentations, one after the other, and then the last 15 minutes will be devoted to comments, questions, and remarks. No? So we will start now directly with the presentation, Scaling Out Sustainable Land Use Systems, some insights and implications from the Caribbean dry zone of Colombia. From Marta Del Rio Duque, who is a PhD student at the Humboldt University and at ZALF, where she is part of the Sustainable Land Use in Developing Countries working group. No? Marta is involved in the impact assessment and effective scaling out of strategies for sustainable agriculture, business models, and livestock system for simultaneous targeting, climate change mitigation, and peace building in Colombia. So with this short presentation, I will invite Marta, please, to start.
Thank you for the invitation. As you know, my name is Marta, and I want to share with you some insights or some details about my first paper related to scaling out sustainable land use system in Colombia. The project are based in 2 regions. One of them is Caribbean, and the other is in the Amazonian tropical forest. But today I want to talk only about Caribbean dry zone because it's very different. The main problem in the region is the land degradation. The level of erosion is high, and I want to share with you some details about this research. This project is part of the research. My research is part of the project that have a lot of partners. Between them, there are Alliance Biodiversity SIAD, CPAF, ZALF, TUNEN, and the project is supported by Federal Minister for Environment, Nature Conservation, and Nuclear Safety from German Bundestag. And this is the area. You can see on the map the area that I am talking. The name of the department is Cesar. Cesar is located in the north of the Colombia country, and is part of the dry zone, Caribbean dry zone in Colombia. And as you can see on the map, the land degradation high. You can identify with red and yellow the most highly land degradation levels. And as you can see on the table, the level in general, the level of degradation of the department is very high, 81%, compared with the national level that is lower than this. And there are other problems that they are very important in the region. For example, in terms of social aspect, land restitution request or land use conflict. As you can see, the land use conflict reflects the overexploitation or underexploitation. And it's weird because the department has a lot of opportunities to have different crops, but actually there are a lot of livestock farming in the region, and for that reason, the land use conflict in the region is high. The idea with this research is to investigate or to analyze how can enhance the production, to have environmental friendly food production, and to maximize social and economic benefits through sustainable land use system. But to do that, we need to know how can do that. And these kind of SLUs are highly context specific strategies. And to understand successful process, we need to know how can scale out SLUs in the same region. For that reason, we talk about scaling out, because the idea with the scaling out is to understand how can works the process of diffusion, dissemination, propagation of the technology among more producers in the same environment. The idea is we are talking about two terms. One of them is sustainable land use systems. As you can see on the slides, the idea with the sustainable land use system is to meet in the same set three dimensions: ecological dimension, social dimension, and economic dimension. And as you can see with the colors, green colors or blue colors reflect the economic sustainability issues. In that case, is related to land productivity or property or intensive and transformation use of land. In terms of ecological sustainability, most of the times we are talking about pollution or restore ecosystem and combat land degradation, that in that region is high. And the other point is related to social sustainability or social issues. And in that case, we are talking about land property rights. And as you can see in the last slide, the problems related to land property rights in the region is high, because there are a lot of groups, not only FARC, there are other, for example, auto self-defenses groups that they are in the region, and they are combating with FARC in other moments. And for that reason, in the region, there were a lot of problems related to land dispossession. And the other point that, as you know, is the eradication of poverty. The idea is to build a sustainable land use system with very context specific for dry zone or for the CESAR department. For that reason, we are talking about not in general a sustainable land use system. We are talking about two types of sustainable land use system. One of them is agroforestry, cocoa agroforestry system, and silvopastoral system. As you can see on the table that is in the slide, at the end of the slide, the most important agricultural sector or subsector in the region is livestock. But there are a lot of strategies to try to improve or to enhance the cocoa production in the region. Now the productivity of milk is in the region is lower than the other part of the country, and the idea is to have more, for example, more producer with cocoa, because as you can see, the number between them is totally different. There are a lot of producers with livestock in the livestock sector, but there are a few producers in the cocoa sector, and maybe cocoa sector could be an alternative to the region. And the other sector, on the other sustainable land use system that we are considering to analyze is the silvopastoral system. The silvopastoral system tries to combine fodder plants such as grasses and leguminous herbs with shrubs and trees for animal nutrition and complementary uses. But the idea with this kind of strategies is to improve the animal sector. The other complementary uses at the end are few in the region, are few. Then, as you can see on the graph, the sustainable land use systems, or in that case, agroforestry combines in the same plot different strategies related to different crops, and the idea is to improve not only the main crop. The idea is to improve, for example, soil, biodiversity, mitigation of the climate change, and generate other opportunity to the population in the region. Then the idea of this research is to examine the key factors at the level of this dimension that you can see in the second column, that is related to biophysical issues, economic and profitability, market, social, policy, and institution. And the idea is to understand what is the main factors that facilitate or hinder the diffusion and replication process inside the same environment. Because, as you know, when we are doing a new technology or a new strategy, you need to know what is the constraints or the barriers to promote the same topic into more producers. Because the idea is not only to have impact in the pilot, the idea is to complement the impact with other producers. Then consider that there are different regions in Colombia for scaling out options to improve the sustainability land use. CESAR department has most urgent priorities and emerge as a region of cross-cutting importance due to different topics, for example, socioeconomic and environmental topic. Because as you can see, there are a lot of problems with social issues, for example, land dispossession, property rights. In terms of economic, in economics, there are a lot of problems because, for example, livestock sector has bad strategies or not property strategies to improve the quality of the soil. And this kind of practice generates more degradation in the region. And for the other, in the other side, in the environmental topics, the problem is the erosion, because the erosion have a lot of problem with the carbon storage or generate the strategies to mitigate the climate in the region. In terms of social issues, the department has the 4th largest number of requests for land restitutions. It means CESAR is one of the departments with the highest level of land dispossession. It's one of the main implications of the armed conflict in the region. And in terms of economic issues, the resource depletion of the region has been mainly associated to cotton in the past and palm oil mining and livestock production in the present. For that reason, it's very important that we have in the same project livestock sector and other good alternative to transform the degradation, or to try to improve the degradation of the soils in CESAR. What does it mean scaling out?
Marta, sorry, that you know it's already 15 minutes. Please,
okay.
you go wrapping up your presentation.
Yeah, then scaling out is related to how can impacting greater numbers. And when I do this exercise in the different two crops, livestock sector and cocoa sector, I could identify different elements in the main dimensions. At the level of biophysical dimension, for example, for cocoa agroforestry system, is very important to take into account the irrigation plan, because in CESAR there are water scarcity and cocoa crops need a lot of water. And for that reason is necessary to have an irrigation plan. In the same dimension, biophysical, for the silvopastoral system, one problem that we need to have in taking into account is the soil compaction of in the region, because for the cattle activity could be worse this topic. Other aspect that is very important that they mention in both sector was the needs of the necessity to have diversified buyers, because in the region there are a lot of buyers or strong buyers, and we need to strengthen the regional markets. And in the case of policy and institution, it's very important to generate public-private partnerships in the cocoa sector to promote this crop in the region. And the idea in the silvopastoral system is to generate a political awareness at different levels, because there are a big program in that moment that the name is Ganadería Sostenible, but maybe at the level at local level we need to have other alternative, or to try to strengthen the political awareness at the local level. And this is my presentation. I don't know if you have some doubts or comments.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you very much, particularly because you stood up today very early, 6:30, almost 7 in the morning now in Colombia. Thank you very much. We will save the questions or comments for the end. I don't know what's happening. Very funny images here. Okay, please, we move on to Hector Camilo Morales. Hector, we go to your presentation. If you, Hector, could share your screen now. Hector is also a PhD researcher at ZALF, at the Humboldt University. And his research focuses on the nexus between sustainable land use systems and environmental peace building practices. He's a political scientist and holds a master in development studies from the London School of Economics. So, Hector, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Everyone is seeing the screen right now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you very much, Marta, and everyone for the opportunity to present our research. And yes, I'm doing this PhD work about the opportunities, or I want to know what are the possible impacts of designing sustainable land use systems as a way of implementing environmental peace building as an environmental peace building practice, in which impacts have implementing these sustainable land use systems on peace building, especially in a post-war or peace or post-peace agreement scenario, such as the Department of Caquetá. This is part of my second article. So in order to know what kind of impacts are having these sustainable land use systems design into peace building, you need to know which kind of conflicts there are there on the ground and which kind of risks are present for the population after the peace agreement with regards to environmental challenges. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this second part, the socio-environmental conflicts and the responses that are proposed by the communities and the government in this region. So first I'm going to present a little bit about the literature, then some definitions, the research questions for this particular paper, and the methodology, some preliminary results. There's some more analysis to be done here. And then a conclusion. So after a conflict ends, there have been two main trends in the literature to assess the risk of or the possibilities to sustain the peace afterward with regards to the management of natural resources. There is one perspective, and it's about how environmental cooperation could enhance peace, and there is a window of opportunity after the a peace agreement has been signed. So some authors state that natural resources have the potential to promote and consolidate peace. The logic or the rationale of the environmental peace building approach is that the benefits of the cooperation outweigh the self-interest of conflicts, and this could contribute to the pacification of coupled human natural systems in a durable and multifaceted way, right? So basically, environmental cooperation on a technical level can open dialogue spaces to solve conflicts. And further, in the case of Colombia, there are some papers that are stating that the peace process has offered opportunities to develop projects that promote new schemes of land planning and management, including natural resource governance to improve the resilience of local communities. So the other perspective is that there are serious risks for the environment and for natural resource management after a peace agreement has been signed. So in the literature about peace building, there is a high risk of recurrence of violence, especially immediately after the post-war period. So this window of opportunity may close very, very fast if there are no governance mechanisms. Yeah, there is the opportunity that natural capital help rebuild the economies. However, it could also impose some serious threats to the environment, because zones that have not been opened before the conflict could be open for international interest, and deforestation rates may increase, like it happened in Colombia. And also the Leibniz, for example, names the what is called the inequality, mistrust, corruption trap. And this is basically happens a lot in countries that depend on extractive sector industries or highly agricultural dependent countries. And Ide also talks about the risk that the focus in environmental cooperation only may pose to the communities and to the societies. And these effects or these risk factors could be depoliticization. So some historical conflicts are not being addressed by merely environmental cooperation. And also sometimes it could even deepen the deterioration of the conflict, or the deterioration of the environment. It may displace some communities. Yes, so I'm going to talk about the socio-environmental conflicts in Caquetá. And just a working definition of this is that a socio-environmental conflict happens when one or more actors do not agree regarding the access, use, and distribution of natural resources in the environment, and they perceive that satisfying the interest of one implies necessarily that the other does not satisfy theirs, causing a confrontation. So it's a relational thing. There are many different types of conflicts. It could be criminality, resources, ideologies. It could be intra-group or intergroup. It could be non-violent and violent. And these are named in the field research that we conducted. So my research questions were, what are the perceived socio-environmental conflicts and risks in Caquetá after the peace agreement? And what are the solutions proposed by the government, and how those solutions relate with the ones proposed by the communities? So the methodology to collect the data, I did an extensive literature review about literature on environmental peace building, on typology of environmental conflicts, and also the conflicts present in Caquetá specifically. I did some semi-structured interviews with experts at different levels. We conducted 2 workshops in Caquetá, one present in Caquetá last year, different times, and with some farmers and experts from the region, and a virtual workshop with the stakeholders from this project of sustainable land use systems. And then after we conduct a small survey or questionnaire to corroborate what was found in the workshops. So the case of Caquetá. Caquetá is a region that is located in the south of Colombia. It's the entry point of the Amazon region in Colombia. And it presents several overlapping challenges because it is a natural resource-rich area of the country. Is the entry point of the Amazon basin. And it was also the headquarters, so to say, of the FARC guerrillas. So when the peace agreement was signed, there was a power vacuum, and the deforestation rates grew a lot. You can see here in this picture how the agricultural frontier was expanding and expanding, and it was putting at risk this huge area that is called Serranía del Chiribiquete, which is a natural park that is protected. It's the biggest natural park or protected area in the whole world, and is the size of Belgium. So, but the deforestation is advancing at a high pace. And there is different actors and different power symmetries in this region, which makes it very interesting to analyze from this perspective. So with regards to the literature about conflicts in Caquetá, there is a lot of literature about illegal economies, and mainly about the land use for coca crop or coca plantation, and how the rural farmers interact with the coca cultivation, how this pose a great risk for them and for the development of the area. Also, there is some literature about illegal logging. This is one kind of a conflict that is very present there. Land grabbing, which is related to both coca crops, illegal logging, and also extensive cattle ranching. And there is a lot of, or there is some literature about how historically the colonization of land in Caquetá had a lot to do with farmers coming from the Andean region, entering into the jungle, sometimes even with incentives from the government to cut forests, and then they grant titles, land titles to access land and to make farms. There is also illegal mining in the basin Caquetá River. So most of these rivers go to the Amazon River. So it's very important for the Amazon ecosystem, this region. So one of the findings in the workshop that we conducted is that it was prioritized by these participants that deforestation is one of the conflicts, or is a very important conflict there. And also there are two that are related, which is land property or formalization and land grabbing. So this is a dynamic that is also could be seen as a driver for deforestation, and as well extensive cattle ranching. So as I told you, the agricultural frontier is advancing. Other conflicts that are present there are the inadequate land use and overexploitation, and the lack of state presence to control natural environment. With regards to the actions or initiatives that have been carried out historically and are present right now, the farmers and the local experts named that there are some technical solutions that have been implemented. So many technical solutions, for example, integral farms, which is related to this practice of sustainable land use systems, some purchase of land to get to the small farmers, intensive milk production, equitable distribution of land is interesting, because this is something that is also lacking still. The conservation and sustainable production incentive program, and a strategy to plant more trees in the Amazon. And with regards to spaces for discussion and dialogue, there are several initiatives. For example, there is an environmental public hearing that is called the Table for, or the Board for Defense of Water. And the populations are very active in this table, and also a board for to grant deforestation or to tackle deforestation in the region. That is called the Caquetá Forest Board or Table for Discussion. And there's also an initiative that is called Soil and Water Conservation Districts, which is very interesting. And with regards to the risks, which are more taught in the future, in the next 10 years, most of the risks are almost the same, but some had to do with the legislation that came after the peace agreement. For example, with the CIDRES, which is a law where some areas are habilitated for agriculture but this could also bring monoculture and agglomeration of some areas. And in this ecosystem, this is particularly risky and sensitive, because the land use is mostly for forest and not that much for agricultural production. There's also the mining and energy development policy that impose a threat. So, and also related to this international occupation. So some actors, international actors, are starting to look for access into this region that was previously occupied by the guerrillas, and now is available somehow. And of course, the coca cultivation and social decomposition, they call, is present also in Caquetá. And I also asked about the scenarios that they thought were the most factible to deal with these risks and conflicts. And they named some countries of rural development, some community action boards that are very local. For example, they named a very interesting alternative that is to create a space for dialogue about the problem of delimitation between protected area systems with decision makers. And this is very important because one of the, that I'm going to present right now, one of the main strategies of the government is to grant control with security forces and judiciary measures of the protected areas and the areas around the protected areas to stop deforestation. So there are four main policies that have been implemented by the government. One is Visión Amazonía, which is a national program that seeks to promote sustainable agriculture that reconciles livelihoods for vulnerable populations and to promote environmental conservation. And this has a lot of cleverage with the funds from the international community. For example, some programs from RED Plus, and this has the same critics as RED Plus in all around the world, that some communities that depend on the forest are now being dependent on external funds, and they don't have control in their own livelihoods. And there's also little evaluation about this Visión Amazonía. Recently, there was signed the Leticia Pact, which is a proposal that both the Colombian and the Peruvian government signed to stop deforestation, and is based on satellite and in monitoring from satellite. And one that is very controversial is called the Artemisa operation, which is mainly military and judiciary, and it is basically displaying a task force of military around the protected areas to stop deforestation, to stop extensive cattle ranching and other illegal uses of land. But this is very contested because there are less options for dialogue with the landless farmers, and it does not acknowledge the historical process of colonization of these farmers in the region. And also there are no alternatives or livelihood alternatives that are coordinated with this strategy. There are some, but it's a little bit discoordinated. And also some claim that it was too late when this military force entered, because there were already other illegal actors present there in these regions. And this, for example, is contested because the target to stop deforestation in the National Development Plan was not so ambitious. They said that they were aiming to stop deforestation after, or to keep deforestation under 220,000 hectares per year, which is a lot. Also recently, the Escazú agreement was signed by the president, which is an agreement that claims for access to environmental information and environmental justice, but it has not been ratified by the Congress. There are some controversies because it is the governmental official party which is saying, hey, please do not pass this law here because we need previous consultation before the law is passed. So it's basically delaying the ratification by the Congress.
Hector, sorry, yes. Just that you know, we have hit the 15 minutes.
Yeah, conclusions, this is the last slide. So the preliminary conclusion is that there is more literature on the process of land use for coca crops as source of conflict in Caquetá, less about other types of socio-environmental conflicts. although deforestation has taken a lot of attention right now. So after, to talk about after the peace agreement, there is an agreement about among practitioners and local experts that deforestation and land uses are common current conflict drivers and also represent future risks in this region. And the most important thing that in the analysis that has come forward is that there is a dissonance between the governmental response and the solutions that the local population named in the workshops. So, for example, if we take this literature about the opportunity or the window of opportunity that opens when a peace agreement is being signed around environmental cooperation, when the government does take such a huge attention to military operations over dialogue scenarios or already existing governance mechanisms that are in place there, there is a risk that the trust levels are diminished and that the historical conflicts between farmers and the government in these faraway regions are exacerbated. So it's very important, and this is like a common response, but it's very important to coordinate and cooperate between civil actors and the military component, and specifically to take the civil state to these regions and not only military solutions. And especially to acknowledge the practices that have been already there in place, mostly technical, but also some practices around environmental protection, environmental water conservation, etc. And the importance of implement the first point of the peace agreement, which has to do with land formalization policy, land use plans, and an agrarian reform that is needed in Colombia to grant both peace and environmental conservation. Yep, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Hector, for this very, very interesting presentation connecting land issues and, of course, conflict, and natural resources. So now we go to the last and third presentation of the day. It's now Tatiana Rodriguez's turn. She is, of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, also a PhD candidate. She's at the Humboldt University of Berlin, and of course at LAS, that is our Cooperation Institute today in this colloquium. She got her master's degree in economics and development in Colombia and has been working on topics related to impact assessment of rural development interventions, particularly in Colombian conflict-affected territories. So please, Tatiana.
Good afternoon, everyone. Are you seeing now my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I will start. Thank you, Dennis, for your introduction. Today I will present the development and results of my research titled Enabling Conditions to Promote Agroforestry Systems within Cattle Ranching and Cocoa Farming in 2 different regions of Colombia, a comparative ex-ante impact assessment. So agroforestry systems have been recognized as land use strategies that contribute to biodiversity conservation, climate change mitigation, as well as sustainable rural livelihoods. These systems are the most appropriate use for around 16% of Colombian land and have proven to be sustainable in cocoa and cattle production. Although there are some studies that have addressed the enabling condition to promote or scale up agroforestry systems in particular regions of Colombia, there is a need to address regional differences across farming systems. So this time we are going to talk about scaling up. That is a concept very focused on the institutional part of the scaling process. So the idea is to influence the political process or involving other stakeholders or institutions in the process of scaling or expanding the implementing institutions in the regions. So this research intends to answer two questions. The first one is, what are the requirements for promoting silvopastoral system for cattle ranching and cocoa agroforestry systems for cocoa farming in Cesar and Caquetá, Colombia? And which factors could hinder or foster this process of scaling up in the study regions? To do so, we use SCALA, a sustainability impact assessment tool, which also includes the assessment of the relevance of 11 resource requirements and 59 scaling up factors divided into 7 categories using a scoring system. So in the end, this tool generates a percentage deviation from an optimal situation. So the lower the values of deviation, the more likely successful scaling up potential will be. We did this assessment through 16 individual and 2 group interviews in both study regions with representatives from rural extension institutions, agricultural research institutions, NGOs, and universities. The data analysis is conducted not only based on the quantitative results of SCALA, but also include a qualitative content analysis of the experts' perception regarding the different resource requirements and scaling up factors. So as a part of the results, we found that financial capital required for the initial investment and the maintenance of both systems, silvopastoral system and cocoa agroforestry systems, is perceived by experts as medium or high in both regions. In the case of cocoa agroforestry systems in Cesar, interviewees who claim the need is high indicate that the establishment of an agricultural irrigation systems is also included in the initial investment. And for silvopastoral system in Cesar, financial capital is mostly perceived as a medium or high requirement, depending on the particular arrangement of the silvopastoral system. But for example, there is an opinion from an expert in Caquetá who state that farmers can start to implement silvopastoral system with low capital based on natural regeneration and live fences. In the case of know-how and skills and also additional labor, we found that this requirement is perceived as medium and high for both systems since they incorporate more elements into the production systems. So they require proper management based on knowledge and skills. So this requirement is not only for the farmers, but also for the technical assistants who advise the farmers. The fact that these systems incorporate more elements also implied additional labor. Thus, most of the interview experts perceive it as a medium or high requirement to implement silvopastoral system and allow or medium prerequisite to implement cocoa agroforestry systems. In terms of laws, specifically agricultural and natural resource management laws, experts perceive this requirement as medium or high. But this need lies not only in the issuance of different laws or instruments, for example, credits, incentives, or education programs, but also in their effective implementation. In terms of organization or institution at the local level, this necessity is perceived slightly higher for cocoa agroforestry system than for silvopastoral system in Cesar and Caquetá. Cocoa interviewees agreed that it is necessary to strengthen the local social organization and to involve as many cocoa farmers as possible so that everyone's voice is heard when it comes to planning and implementing cocoa-related projects. In terms of infrastructure, this is generally perceived as a medium demand resource for both farming systems in the two regions. However, cocoa farmers perceive that there is a slightly higher demand for infrastructure in Cesar, since a water distribution system is still required among cocoa farmers to guarantee equitable access. In terms of marketing facilities, this demand is generally perceived as medium or high, since products derived from both systems can be easily sold in local markets. However, this demand is perceived to be slightly higher for cocoa agroforestry systems, as cocoa farmers have to rely on intermediaries to sell their products at cheaper prices. In terms of processing facilities, the requirement is medium or high, because, for example, cocoa producer in Cesar and Caquetá mostly lack adequate facilities for the two most important post-harvest process, fermentation and driving of cocoa. In terms of inputs, the need is mostly assessed as low or medium, since these systems aim to reduce the use of external inputs and take advantage of the organic waste produced on the farms. And finally, in terms of the land, is scored as not relevant or with low relevance for both systems, because, for example, the implementation of silvopastoral systems implies the intensification of their production activities, that is less land. And in the case of cocoa farms, these farms are traditionally family farms that cannot establish larger plantation due to labor limitations. So now, in terms of the scaling up potential, in general terms, the scaling up potential is slightly higher for cocoa agroforestry systems than for silvopastoral systems in both study regions. For example, if we see the first category, the attributes of the systems, this is based on 17 scaling up factors. And if we zoom in on this category, 7 out of 17 factors are identified as hindering factors across the farming systems and regions. And the two most critical factors in this category are the insufficient access to financial means by farmers to implement these systems, and difficulties to access technical inputs such as vaccination or synthetic fertilizers. If we see the capacity of implementing organization in the regions, we notice that is the category with the lower deviation from the optimal situation. So it's the best rate category in all of the different categories. And if we see these capacities as a fostering factors, are, for example, that the institution has a clear, transparent, and binding framework of rules. The institution have well-educated technical and management staff. They have a strong leadership with good reputation. They have experience in the area of study. They have access to well-established networks to donors. Their staff is trained to ensure participatory project selection and planning, and the organizations have access to basic assets. And the most critical category in this evaluation is the economic condition at the local level, because here we obtain the largest average deviation with respect to the optimal situation. So the assessment of this category is based on 7 factors. And this time, 6 out of 7 factors are identified as hindering factors across both farming systems and regions. And here the most critical aspect is the lack of processing facilities and most of the farmers that sell cocoa and cattle products, they do it without transformation. So as part of some general conclusions, we found that financial capital required for promoting both agroforestry systems is perceived as medium or high in both regions. However, the farmers have not sufficient access to the financial means to do so. Although the demand for technical inputs is mostly assessed as low or medium, farmers have difficulties to access them in the local markets because of high prices. The marketing facilities are generally perceived as medium or high requirement to promote these agroforestry systems. Nevertheless, these facilities are difficult to access by farmers, and there is not a market who guarantees reasonable prices for products derived from agroforestry systems. The capacities of implementing organization from the study sites generate an enabling conditions to promote those systems in the particular regions. And finally, land availability does not hinder the promotion of agroforestry systems in both regions. However, for example, in Cesar, cocoa farmers have some concerns about land rights. But most of the experts didn't consider this as a hindering factor. And that's all from my side. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tatiana. Thank you again to Hector also and Marta. Tatiana and Marta, I repeat, they stood up very early this morning in Colombia to provide us with this presentation. It's great. So we have time for a few questions, maybe two or one, but Jorge Luis Celare, a colleague at ZALF, he already expressed he would like to place a question. So please, Jorge.
Thanks, Denise. Thank you all three for the presentation. It was very interesting. I actually just like to ask a few, or well, one of you could expand a little bit more on how the cocoa value chains in Colombia are organized, because throughout the presentations you've mentioned that the farmers face several issues, right? Several barriers related to market access or access to inputs, etc. So I think it could be interesting to understand a little bit more how the cocoa value chains are organized in Colombia. Are farmers usually organized into cooperatives? How are these groups? Do they have direct access to the buyers? I know that happens through middlemen. Is this selling of cocoa happening through contracts, etc.? And also, I think it was in Marta's presentation that she mentioned certification or sustainability standards. How is the current situation regarding sustainability standards in the cocoa sector, and how do you see this as an option to improve farmers' access to markets and possibly better prices?
So maybe I could start to tell you something about the cocoa value chain. Most of the cocoa production in Colombia is made by small farmers. Most of them sell their products as just beans, dry beans, and mostly of the production is sold through intermediaries, not to the direct buyer. There are two main companies in Colombia who buy most of the production, and so the market is very focused on these two companies. I don't know if Marta would like to complement a bit.
Yeah, Jorge, thank you for your question. Regarding the value chain of cacao in Colombia, the value chain is very focalized or put a lot of emphasis in the national market. actually most of the producer sell the cocoa to this kind of company, and the market is for national consumption. And regarding the certifications, depend of the region. For example, in the Caquetá region, there are some groups that they are working with the organic certifications, but most of the times in the rest of the country, there are not a lot of certification schemes into the value chain, because as you know, the market is very focalized in the local context, in the regional and national context. For that reason, the certification scheme don't matter a lot inside the country. But for the case of the Caquetá cases, they are exporting their cocoa, and for that reason they are doing some investment in this kind of certifications.
Yeah, thank you. Denise, I think your mic is muted.
Thank you, Jorge. I don't see any other person raising her or his blue hand, but I would like to make one short question also to Hector in this case, and then we can maybe finish with that. Prerogatives of the moderator in this case. Because very interesting what you mentioned, that a lot has been done to solve socio-environmental problems in Caquetá, no? So you mentioned a series of activities, networks, movements, if you want to call it. So I am thinking, what is missing, no? Are these initiatives really useful, or what is to do really to give power to these initiatives that somehow they become in a critical point that they can make really a difference, or it is really the lack of political will who is stopping all these initiatives?
Yes, I think it's a combination of lack of political will and also like the path dependence of a region that has been abandoned for several years, and which is pretty much disconnected with markets and with the central government. So this high dependence on transfers from the central government, the lack of presence of the private sector, and the difficulty to make enterprises in Caquetá has taken a toll on the development of the initiatives. And I think, however, that Caquetá is one of the regions that has been had like this how do you say, how do you call it? The gains of the peace agreement, like immediate gains of the peace agreement, because because a lot has to do with because of their strategic position in the entrance of the Amazon and the global interest to conserve the Amazon forest. And also because the reintegration process in Caquetá has been to some degree successful, of the reintegration process of the guerrillas, and this has attracted a lot of development projects and international cooperation projects into the region. However, the risk is the sustainability factor, and as you said, there are so many initiatives and the populations are adapting very fast, and they sell their initiatives and they sell their projects, but the risk is that these are not sustainable. The risk is that they become dependent on environmental cooperation, and this provides some jobs for 2 or 3 years, but after the project is done, then there is nothing there. So the importance is the political will of the central government, of the regional government, to develop a fiscal policy that enables that these initiatives and projects are taken by the regional actors and institutionalized. And yeah, but there are so many interesting initiatives and so much potential in this region. It's very interesting and very beautiful.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much again, Marta, Hector, Tatiana, for your presentation. For me, it confirms once more how many issues we have in common, particularly with the DSSP project and for sure other projects here at CEF. So we hope we continue with our contact and collaborations also in the future. I think this has been a very good start. No? And thanks also to all of you who attended the presentation. I hope to see you on screen again next Thursday again. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you for the
Dennis.
Have a good day.
presentation.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you.